Hello and welcome back to Secret Diary. I'm your host, Ari Ayala. This is a podcast dedicated to discussing whatever I want to talk about today. I'm in limbo and I'm actually maybe supposed to be working on some projects as we speak. But here I am recording an episode because I feel like it's been way too long. And I'm kind of frantic and I'm probably supposed to be I have like 30 minutes to record this before I need to be out of the door. I have like all my fun garb on. I'm wearing my like Halloween-esque hat. Halloween was like 2 weeks ago. This is like not a Halloween episode at all. I bought white face paint for a costume, and now I've just been doing like semi trad goth looks to make use of my purchase, and I'm really digging it. I think I can't do it all the time because I just like don't have the willpower, but I think it's a fun dive into creativity and kind of challenging myself to explore the things that I used to enjoy when I was a kid. I feel like recently a lot of the things that I am itching to do, desperate to do, has nothing to do with like anything that is like new. It's more so just like re-indulging in things that I've always enjoyed. So a lot of that has been like makeup and um, clothes, which sounds like really mundane and not that important. But I want to make like it's so clear that for the first like 2 years that I moved out here, and hi, if you don't know, I born raised in Florida. I moved to New York City to go to school and get an education. Unfortunately, it just didn't go as planned. I'm still in school. I'm still on track to graduate. I'm just online, and it's definitely been like a completely different experience. I've had to adjust and adapt and grow up in a way that a lot of people usually don't have to at the age of 18, and now I'm freshly just turned 22 this like past month. So I feel like I'm just in a state of reflectance, and so that's like why I'm going back to these old habits or hobbies and interests that I had when I was like before I moved and before I had to like assume a bunch of adult responsibilities. And now here we are. And I realized that I really pocketed a lot of those like things that I considered luxuries, that I didn't really find were luxuries until I moved out, like dressing up and expressing myself in a way that felt like true to who I was. But that also involves like being able to go out and find the time to like curate a wardrobe and like figure out how it is I want to dress today, and like having the time to sit and like contemplate that. And I spent like a really long time not caring about how I looked and not caring about how other people, um, what they were doing in order to like fit in or feel like cool or whatever. And I think within this progress of pushing away from like more appearance based things, I like really stopped caring about anything that had to do with appearances. And I felt like the way that you look is like the least important thing about you. And I feel like I say it all the time, and I because it's something that have like literally ingrained in my brain, reinforced in my mind. A part of me wonders if this is also like the product of growing up in like a in a religious church, like going to church. I went to church for 18 years of my life, on and off again, but pretty consistently. And up until the point where I moved out and moved into the city, I was going to church like 4 times a week, heavily involved in religious activities. And I have to say, like, a lot of the things that I learned growing up, like in a church, have been reinforced in different ways. And I think it's like part of the reason I'm no longer a practicing religious person, because I just like truly have had this crazy experience growing up in what felt like a cult and what felt like a environment that just like tried to so hard to brainwash individuals around me, and like I saw it working, but there was just like I just couldn't not think critically about like what I was being told, and I couldn't not question what I was being told. And I think this trait really helped me like going into adulthood, because I was able to question authority, and I was able to like kind of think for myself and think about like what it is that's important to me. And I soon realized, having to, fend for myself at 18 years old in a big city, that what you look like doesn't matter, because I literally couldn't care less about what I look like. It had nothing to do with my worth and my value. It has nothing to do with the things that I'm passionate about and I desire in that very moment. So I feel like having had those like foundational years on my own, like foraging, my life here in the city, I was really able to get rid of this like need for validation in what I looked like and how others viewed me and perceived me. So that was definitely a blessing in disguise. Let me go ahead and use some like religious euphemisms and wordage, but just know that it has none of the like coveted religious meaning behind it. But these are all things that have benefited me tremendously. Now, I'm not here to say that there aren't lessons that we can learn, right, from the things and the practices and the environments that we grow up around. I think that's exactly the point, is that you get to take what you want and call it your own. I think the purpose of life is nothing. I think you make your own purpose. So every year, um, since I've moved out, and since I've been able to take control of my own life and my own path and decide things for myself outside of like a religious community, outside of my parents and what they want for me, even though they were relatively supportive environments, I always understood that what I wanted to get out of life wasn't necessarily conventional, and it wasn't necessarily something that everybody could agree with, or could really understand like the direction in which I was headed. And I had so many different moments throughout my life where, instead of letting people get into my head, I would just tell them a white lie, and I would just sell them whatever it is that they wanted to hear. Now, not so much. Now, I will just say how it is. I will just be who I am, very unapologetically. But I think growing up, I was so outspoken in my environment. I was in such a kind of survivalist mentality that I just adapted to be the golden child, like the black sheep, the perfect, whatever you want to call it. I was definitely in that role that I had given myself. And now, as somebody who's super passionate about mental health and psychology, and the kind of ways in which the environments in our childhood reinforce certain roles that we give ourselves, I can happily say that I reject this role. I reject the role of the golden child. I reject the role of the perfect person that I had adopted onto myself so that I could, not suffer as much as I had seen people who maybe weren't so like perfect to other people. I think I just was trying to shield myself from some kind of judgment that I didn't have an adult in my life to reinforce to me that, sometimes what other people want out of you or what other people think about you is not your fault. It's not personal. It's a projection. It's what they wish for you, because most of the time, especially in like family relationships, and even like within like religion and like religious establishments, these people want what's like quote unquote best for you in a practical sense, and maybe like and because there's like a book telling you like this is what's good for you, and there's also society telling you this is what's good for you. These are like examples of success stories of people who follow the rules and they get things that other people who don't follow the rules don't get. And I think after a certain point, I just started to ask myself, like, why do we need to follow rules? Why does life need to look so linear? And I think that there were definitely things throughout my life that reinforced these thoughts as well. And I was able to kind of think openly and freely. And there's like a few things throughout my life that I feel like stand out. And one of the biggest ones prior to me leaving was I did gymnastics for like 7 years when I was between the ages of like 7 and 14. My parents couldn't really afford for me to go consistently, but I was so passionate about it for that short while. But I remember there came a point when I was like around 13, 14, when it just started to feel like a chore. And I was excelling. I was like very good at gymnastics and I loved it, but I couldn't be in the gym as much as the other girls because my family couldn't afford it. A lot of the girls that I was in the gym with were homeschooled, so like their whole lives was just gym, 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 and I was, going to school, going to church, like and I couldn't always be at the gym, and so the sheer fact that I was like keeping up, keeping pace, to me in itself showed that it was something I was passionate about, and it was something that at the time I wanted to do. But there came a point where I was just like, this is like not beneficial. What are the odds? Like, I was literally like 14 years old being like, what are the odds of me being like any good at this further? And also, like, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? Do I want to continue pursuing this sport that I've been doing for like almost 7 years now? And I remember telling my mom, like, I'm over it. I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't fun. And she gave me such a hard time because she was like, you should never, you're a quitter. Like, you should not be a quitter. And I think she meant well in her grit, and in her anger, she was trying to instill discipline. So once you start something, you have to commit to it, you have to follow through. But I think the older that I get and the more experiences that I'm put through, you really have to ask yourself, like, what are you willing to commit to? Is it something that you want to do, or is it something that somebody else is telling you should want to do? And I think in that moment, it was like an act of rebellion, but it was also a part of adopting a sense of identity, of true identity, when I was like, you know what? I don't care that you think I'm a quitter. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think small moments like this throughout my life like have really reinforced the strong sense of self and confidence that I have now, that has always been really, really like black and white when it comes to like the people that I meet throughout my life. Thankfully, as an adult, like I've never ran into a situation where I feel like I'm being rejected for who I am. But I think it's simply because I don't look for the validation. And even if I sense like somebody seems like uneasy around me, I never feel like it's a personal thing. I always feel like maybe this person is just like not able to be present with me right now. Maybe they're not able to like accept me for who I am in this moment. And that's perfectly okay. Like, I love me. I accept me. I've made it this far. I'm capable. So at this point, it's like whatever is not being given to me by somebody else, I can give it to myself, or I can go and find it elsewhere. And, not to get like go on a tangent, but I think within this, and like kind of why I want to call this episode probably like the purpose of life is nothing, is because if you surround yourself with the things that you care about, with the things that you are passionate about and you indulge in, that is your purpose. Like, whatever you choose to make of your life is your purpose. And I think I just grew up surrounded by so many different ideologies and reinforcements of a bigger purpose than just loving myself and accepting myself and falling, like marrying onto myself, almost like such a devotion and commitment to knowing who I am and accepting who I am in the moment, and not needing to be like a perfect person, not being to be a golden child and to be the person that like fixes everything. And I think through this, I have opened my eyes to the world that is kind of like hidden beneath like a thick layer of validation, of this fear of loneliness and abandonment that I also feel in moments. But I'm able to kind of separate these irrational fears from my identity and who I am and what it says about me, because it doesn't say anything about me. These are just like structures and ideas that are reinforced onto us through our environments. So a big part of why I even started this podcast is because I think a lot of the things that have radicalized me and have made me such a passionate activist have been simply experiencing what it is to see other people live their lives in a way that seems like sacrificial and almost like martyrism, but for a cause that is not helping them and not going to help the people they care about. So, a lot of these ideas that I have, like not caring about what you look like, appearances, not needing a purpose out of life other than, the one you want to like self proclaim, and kind of stepping into your truth and being your biggest self. I don't want to sound like some kind of like mindset guru, because it's truly like not what I intend to do. I truly believe everyone can have their own opinions. Like if somebody wanted to debate me about any of this, I wouldn't put up a strong argument, because I don't think like my experience is relative to everybody else's. It's simply my perspective, but it's what's worked for me, and I've definitely been able to help a lot of people in my life simply by just sharing about my experience. And like there's a lot of skills that I've developed through my life simply because of this mindset, and most of it has been reinforced through like psychology and therapy. So it's also not just like me off dome. Like I'm certainly not that like just like naturally attuned to figuring shit out, but I like to think I've developed these skills, and this is why like I don't suffer under certain like social structures. Like as somebody who identifies as a woman who has never felt like I fit into this like societal what is a woman. Like I'm very dominant. I don't necessarily have a high voice. I definitely like range on like the way I present myself can range from like very feminine to very like masculine and androgynous. And I think a lot of these things are robbed from us when we try to look and fit into like a heteronormative culture, a culture that is like the result of a patriarchal society. But I'm not trying to really dig into all of those things because I don't care to. I mean, but if anyone is interested in like hearing my thoughts and opinions on like the outer world in the ways in which, we're systemically like being hurt by these lines of thinking, by all means. But I mean, I'm not too like in the mode to like break that all down. I don't even know if like I could, how in depth I would be willing to go, just simply because as much as I know and have sat and read and ruminated, there's like just that's a huge part of my life that I've kind of don't get super affected by anymore, because I've adopted these like new ideals and these new beliefs that kind of like I'm not in the sphere of like heteronormative culture, and having to deal with like the things that I think most people who drink like the capitalist Kool-Aid find themselves trying to balance. But I guess that is like the first step, right? Letting you know that a lot of the reason that I am fulfilled, a lot of the reason that I'm able to like kind of enjoy and indulge in life while still being successful and still like being relatively like stable is because I have cultivated a routine and a structure that sustains me. For me, that's, being able to like eat enough food, and I'm not huge on luxuries in life. I'm very like pretty frugal. I budget the shit out of my life, and I do a lot of stuff for free that like my fun is usually free, or if it's like I'm going out spending money, it's very very budgeted. I'm just a barista. Like I work at a coffee shop, and I have no intention of like having a life that is indulged in luxury. I don't need things. I mean, I have plenty of things, clearly, and I don't really feel like I need anything more. And I also, don't get me started on like shopping addictions and the way people use it as a way to escape from reality and a way to feel better about the current situation. I mean, everybody was okay, this is a perfect example, but probably not. I don't know. The election. We just got our results. Everyone's running a red scare, but in completely other direction. And as somebody heavily involved in activism and in the space of trying to grant people rights, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's through reproductive rights, or through gender identity and sexuality, and like the rights to get married, all of these things, right, that I care and I'm passionate about, I'm still going to care and be passionate about, despite like a perhaps not ideal circumstance. Either of these presidential candidates were going to throw us into the absolute shitter. They don't care about us chronically funding a genocide. These aren't things I'm going to pretend to be devastated on. Like, finally, oh, this is the reality. This has been the reality. These are things that have been in our face for years. We saw the passivity of the last 4 years of our former president. Now we're going to see a new wave of it, and either get organizing in your communities, or continue to sit in fear and beg your elected officials for change. Change doesn't start simply because you're begging another person who has more power than you to go get you more rights, or go fight for a cause that you care about. It starts with finding people who care about what you care about, and organizing and developing a community surrounding it, so that you can hold people like elected officials accountable. But even regardless, when things like this are put in the hands of elected officials, put in the hands of the government, you're able to have resources and support to help continue fighting the fight for the people in your communities, because sometimes it doesn't always pan out. You don't always win the election. The person that you don't always get the right you wanted passed in your state. It's not about that. I think it's about understanding that we have power in numbers and in a collective, and if you're scared, it probably means that you're not prepared. And I mean, we need to be prepared. We need to start preparing. We need to be, doing our civic duty to one another as, citizens of this nation, unfortunately, and finding ways to give each other resources, because at this point we have no clue like where things are headed exactly. But if you're keeping a close eye on things, it doesn't look too bright. It hasn't looked bright to me for probably like years now. And that's why I'm so passionate about activism, and why I'm so passionate about change. I don't expect people who make like way more than the median salary and are given some of the great, like, amazing, like, job security that most of the people in my life will ever know. We will literally never know what it is to feel like the true sense of job security, of housing security, of food security. So I refuse to look to these people to do anything of substance for me. And if they do, I think it starts with listening and uplifting workers' voices, actual working class citizens, and giving them the stage and letting us make decisions for ourselves, not through a voting party. Oop. That's just kind of the it doesn't feel like any fruited labor for us when it's like we're putting all our votes into an electoral system that is just like a shit stain of an example of any kind of like democratic and diplomatic approach to things. We're lucky nothing's burning yet. We're lucky things haven't started burning. But, I digress. In all of this, purpose, life, maybe some people might find it nihilistic to think, that like there is no purpose, or almost maybe for some people that's a little freeing. But I think I've almost gotten to a place of bliss when I started living for myself and the things that I care about, and fighting for the people that have experienced things like me, or less than me, or just at any capacity have struggled, because we all struggle. And I think it starts with not being afraid to critique the system that we live in as the huge reigning contributor, and as well as not being afraid to call people out when they constantly reinforce their own oppression. We're in a double bind, ladies and gentlemen. We're literally being forced to reinforce our own oppression in order to sustain ourselves, in order to not starve. And I think that for some people, that just seems like just as red scared as, people who were, devastated at the result of the election. But the only difference is to sit in devastation, to sit in a state of like hopelessness has never served anyone. Um, I understand that, with these results come like the mental toll of like having to do more work, but it was never going to be easy, and now it certainly isn't going to be any easier. So find people to confide in for sure, but running like to the internet, running and to argue with people on the other side, I think is not going to serve you any better than it would be to start integrating yourself with people who care about the causes that you're afraid are going to be taken from you, or are going to be like sabotaged in any way, because this is where movements start. It starts with people getting upset, people feeling the weight of responsibility to do something, because the people who are in charge don't care about us. And I've seen it go one of two ways, where people just take it as an excuse to keep their head down and continue playing into a system that will never benefit them as much as it benefits the people above them, at an off chance that they get to become more of an oppressor than the oppressed. And I think at the end of the day, all of this is disgusting, and I don't really want any part of it. And I'm trying every single day, I'm trying more and more to detach myself from this system, from this ideology of success being like through your, like the merit of your career, how much money you make, making a shit ton of money, hoping one day you get to like be a billionaire or whatever. I'm not feeding into that. Even like the sheer inaccessibility of education, and even like the networking slew of nepotism in just about any industry at this point, because people are literally terrified to lose their jobs. Um, Despite all this, I'm optimistic, because I'm surrounded by so many strong leaders, by so many people who do care, and I've found a tribe, and we continue to find more, because as things continue to kind of deteriorate and fall apart and crumble around us, people will start waking up, and people will start realizing that this is not going to end if we aren't using our forces and coming together as people who care about one another, not because we're trying to indoctrinate each other into believing what the other person believes, but because we're all just trying to live and survive. And I think in order to do that, we need to come in with open minds, stop judging one another so much for like the things that we cannot see right now, and start being open to embracing people's experiences. All of this is said with due diligence and a level of discernment, because there's certainly people who will take advantage. I think despite all my optimistic approaches to life, there is a hard lesson I've learned, and it's that like in you are not a good person when you're a people pleaser. You are not serving yourself when you are a people pleaser, and people will try to take advantage of you if you are somebody who does work to practice like empathy and optimism through life and giving people the benefit of the doubt. use it with caution, because there are plenty of people in this world who benefit off of this system in an unhealthy way as well. So these are all my scrambled egg thoughts right now. This is everything that I've kind of been like sitting on, tanking on, and I'm gonna go enjoy one of the best bands I've heard in a minute. Shout out Squirts and Showbrain for putting together some of like the most fun punk shows that I've been to since I've moved here. Have definitely like given me a chance to listen to music as somebody who's low income. Like I can't afford to go to a bunch of shows every month, but certainly can afford to pull up to a park every other weekend and enjoy some amazing bands and passionate musicians. And yeah, I hope you guys had, a great October. And I hope as we move into November, I'll get enough time to sit down and talk to you all again. I'm kind of rebranding, making Secret Diary just something more of a personal spew in a bubble. Because social commentary bridges across many continuums. So I'm excited to explore with you all wherever this leads us. And I might have a few guests on soon. I've been a little shy with the guesting because I was like so unsure about the vision for this. But now that it's casual, I say this like every episode. But I mean, everyone's busy, life is busy. You saw what just happened this like past week. Everybody's also kind of devastated. So let's let it simmer, let's let it cool. We'll do a temperature check next time. I'll see you guys later. Thanks so much for tuning in.